Hey everyone. So for this week, we're going to be focusing on deep learning and neural networks. So what is deep learning? Deep learning is a subset of machine learning where the model architecture is inspired by the design of the human brain. And the specific model architecture is called neural networks. And if you took biology or psychology class, you might know that the brain is a huge network of neurons that are connected to each other. And between any two neurons, there's going to be a connection where you basically fire activations at them. And the design of a neural network is inspired off of this, right? We also have neurons within a neural network that are connected to each other that pass information. So, hence the name neural networks. We're going to be using one motivating example through the sequence of videos, and that is going to be digit recognition, which is a very classic problem in computer vision and deep learning. And the task is simply to recognize the digit in a given image, right? And this is derived from the popular MNIST dataset, where we essentially have digits 0 to 9 as grayscale images of size 28 by 28. And we're also going to be working a lot with PyTorch. And PyTorch is one of the most prominent frameworks for deep learning. There's also TensorFlow, uh, and both are equally good. But for the context of this workshop, we're mostly going to be using PyTorch. So for this section, we're going to be focusing on the structure of a neural network. And to go over some base terminology, a neural network consists of multiple layers that are all connected to each other. And there are three types of layers. There's the input layer, the hidden layer, and the output layer. And each of these layers will contain a certain number of neurons or nodes, if you think about it as a graph. And each neuron is going to store some kind of numerical value. And we'll sort of go over how we get these numbers a little later. Well, let's now go a little deeper and learn more about the input layer, which, as the name suggests, is responsible for the input to your neural network. And the value of each neuron in your input layer corresponds to each feature of our model's input. So for a digit recognition task, right, like image classification, each node in our input layer is going to represent the grayscale intensity of each pixel, right? If we have an RGB image, we're going to multiply that by the two channels. But in computer vision, the nodes can represent pixel values essentially. For a regression problem, like house price prediction, each node can represent different features uh, from our data table, like the location, the cost of living, the size of the house, etc. The output layer, on the other hand, is responsible for the output to our deep learning model. And the number of neurons is going to correspond to the specific task that we have at hand. So for a classification problem with n different classes, we might have n neurons, with each neuron storing the probability for that given class. For a regression problem, like house price prediction, we might have a single neuron storing the predicted value of whatever our target variable is. The magic in neural networks happens sort of in the middle, right? With these hidden layers. And we can have more than one hidden layers. And in that case, we're going to have a deep neural network. Although in most cases, actually, one hidden layer is actually enough, right? For simpler problems, one hidden layer usually encodes most of the information we need to, solve the task that we have at hand. And arbitrarily adding more layers is not necessarily better because this comes with the cost of greater model complexity, which, as we covered last time regarding the curse, not the curse dimensionality, excuse me, but regarding the bias variance trade-off, a more complex model is usually not the best for our model. We also have, for each given hidden layer, a user-defined number of neurons. And how you define the number of neurons in your hidden layers is really up to you. But a general rule of thumb is that it should be between the size of the input and output layer. And that as you go across your layers from the input to the output, the number of neurons in the hidden layer should generally be decreasing. So let's go back to our motivating example of digital recognition, right? What would our input, output, and hidden layers be? Well, we know our input layer is going to have 784 neurons because we have a 28 by 28 image that is at grayscale. So each of our neurons is going to represent the value in a given pixel. The output layer is going to have 10 neurons, representing the probability of each of the digits from 0 to 9. Now, what's going to be encoded in the hidden layer? Well, I'll give you guys some time to stop and think. Well, what is encoded in a hidden layer is really arbitrary, but theoretically, the hidden layer should be encoding information, namely features or high-level concepts that is relevant to solving the task at hand. So in the case of digital recognition, uh, the neurons in your hidden layers might learn specific concepts like curves, horizontal lines, or like vertical bars, where, if this specific neuron is responsible for learning a specific type of curve, and that curve is present in our image, that neuron is going to be fired up, essentially, right? Uh, well, that is theoretically the case. In real life, it is not necessarily the case that our neurons pick up these very interpretable features and high-level concepts. But, we would like to imagine that they do. And in our next video, we're going to be talking about forward propagation and how exactly an input is going to be mapped to our output. See you then.